Think I saw.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the February 15th, 2017 meeting of the Frederick County Planning Commission. To begin our meeting, would you join us in a moment of silence, please? Thank you. We have to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move for adoption of the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We have minutes from December the 7th.
Move for adoption of December 7th minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Time for committee reports, and for on the commission side, Mr. Unger took care of a lot of things that other people couldn't take care of, so he's going to be reporting on 3 of them. So we'll start with the Frederick County Sanitation Authority.
Okay, for Sanitation Authority, the board has done a 10-year plan to approximately how much money they'll be spending in the next 10 years, and they have projected $71 million. Some of the main things for the cost of this is relocating the Anderson Water Treatment Plant. What we're going to do is take it off of the Carmoose property and relocate it onto our own land we have adjacent to it. And that will also save us about $1 million a year for water, because we're paying the Carmoose for $1 million a year for water, so that's going to help us a lot. And the Opequon Water System Plant, we're planning on putting a plant down on the Opequon Creek, and we should be able to pull 8 million gallon a day out of that. So that's going to also really help Frederick County out, or the sanitation department out, as far as that's concerned too. Our customer base for December 2016, we had a total of people on water was 15,151. On the sanitary, we had 14,659. Rainfall for the month was 1.69 inches. Previous month was 1.44. We average about 3 inches a month, and we are below average on our rainfall for the last couple of months. Deal plant, we're pulling about 1.6 million gallon a day out of there, 1.5 million gallon out of the Anderson plant. We purchased about 2 million gallon of water from the city of Winchester last month. Daily average is 5 million gallon per day, and average for the year is about 5.4, so we are running a little below average. And that's about it for that part of it.
What's next? Transportation?
Transportation, I don't have all my notes on that, but we did have a pretty lengthy discussion with Warren County. Warren County is wanting to take tractor and trailers off of Reliance Road, going over from Middletown, going over to 522. And the reason being, they have a pretty narrow piece of road through there when you get into Warren County, and their tractor and trailers are having to stop and let people pass, and they're running into the ditches and tearing the ditches up. So Frederick County has agreed to join them and see if we can leave it, not have tractor and trailers going over that road. So hopefully that'll work out, because quite honestly, I think they're right. It shouldn't be over there anyway. Mm-hmm. And what's left? DRRS. Okay, we reappointed officers, and I got to be chairman again, and Kevin Kinney is vice chair. And what we talked about was medical officers in the RA. And I think the main topic was chiropractors. And they want to be, there's some places where they would like to be out in the RA, and nobody could find anything wrong with it. So we're going to be sending that to Planning Commission to see how they feel about it too. And the final thing we talked about was buy rights in the RA, and some of the special events for the facilities. And we're going to take that back to the RRS next month and talk about that some more.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for doing all that work. Let's see, while we're on the county's committees, I would like to appoint some citizen members, and we have two major committees. One is the comprehensive plan, and the other is development regulations, which Mr. Unger just spoke of. For the purposes of the DRRC, I'd like to appoint Jay Banks from the Back Creek District. I would like to appoint Tim Stowe, also from the Back Creek District.
What's this building?
I would like to appoint Dwight Schenk from the Gainesboro District, and Mr. Whit Wagner from the Stonewall District. That's for development review and regulations. On comprehensive plans, let's see here, we have Mr. Jim Galladay, who served on this board for a long, long time. We have Kay Dawson from the Redbud District, and Mr. Tony Morelli of the Apecan District, and we're delighted to have them involved, and if anybody else would like to get involved, we can appoint you too. So, let's see here. Mr. Dunn from the Board of Supervisors, report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On January 11th,
Government
the
bond.
board the board's met twice since your meeting on the 4th, and we passed 6 items that previously had been before this commission. They include the following. One was an ordinance agreement to the Frederick County Code, Chapter 144, Article 5, which was a revision to the Frederick County subdivision of land to reduce the right-of-way with mandatory to create a family lot. The second item was an ordinance to the Frederick County Code, Chapter 165, zoning, Article 9, nonconforming uses, which was to increase the time frame a nonconforming use can be discontinued before it is deemed abandoned per the Code of Virginia. That was from 1 year to 2 years. An ordinance amendment to the County Code, Chapter 165, zoning, Article 6, business and industrial zoning districts, Part 603, B2, which was an ordinance to eliminate motorcycle repair to the B2 General Business District and allow this use in the M1 and M2 district. The next item was an ordinance amendment to the Frederick County Code, Chapter 165, zoning, Article 2, supplementary use, regulations, parks, buffers, etc. And that purpose was to include indoor recreation as a conditional use in the M1 light industrial zoning district. There was also an ordinance amendment to Chapter 165 zoning, Article 8, which was to increase the disturbed area permissible to be considered a minor site plan from 5,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. And a review of the comprehensive plan, which was passed by the Board of Supervisors. The February 8th, 2017 meeting had nothing that was pertaining specifically for planning. That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the report. This is the time on our agenda that we ask the audience if you'd like to speak to us on any subject except for the public hearing. Anything else that's not on the agenda? Anyone? Well, we will close the citizen comment portion. Our first item is a public hearing. It's rezoning 02-17 for Express Oil Change and Tire Engineers, submitted by Greenway Engineering to rezone .604 acres from the B2 General Business District to B3 Industrial Transition District with proffers. The property is located on the west side of Front Royal Pike, Route 522 South, and is immediately south of the IHOP restaurant, approximately 1,000 feet south of the Interstate 81 exit 313. And it is in the Shawnee Magisterial District, and it is property identification number 64-A-1F.
Madam Chair, I'll have to, I'm sorry, I thought you were finished. I have to recuse on this one.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the commission. As you stated, this is an application to rezone .6 acres from the B2 Business General District to the B3 Industrial Transition District with proffers. I would note that the applicant is seeking this rezoning to facilitate the construction of an Express Oil and Tire facility. If I can direct you to the screen on your left, the subject property is outlined in black. For reference purposes, we have Front Royal Pike, Route 522 South along the frontage. And adjacent to the property, we have the IHOP restaurant. Now, this property is located within the sewer water service area, and the 2035 comprehensive plan calls for this property to be developed with commercial land uses. I would note that the existing B2 as well as the requested B3 district both conform to that designation. Now, with this rezoning, the applicant has proffered a number of things. First, they've proffered to exclude a few uses such as landscaping, warehousing, utilities, and trailer parking. They've limited new commercial entrances to one right-in, right-out partial access only. They're also providing an interparcel connection with the adjacent IHOP property to facilitate access to the signalized intersection with 522 and Travelodge Drive. And they're also providing a monetary contribution of 10 cents per developed square foot to Fire and Rescue. Now, following the public hearing, staff is seeking a recommendation from the Planning Commission to forward to the board. I would be glad to answer any questions, and Mr. Evan Wyatt with Greenway Engineering is here on behalf of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Yes, Mr. Oates.
Ms. Perkins, the land use restrictions that's being proffered out, like landscaping or local transit services like a taxi, is that something staff has requested that the applicant remove?
No, it was provided by the applicant.
Okay.
I would have to defer to the applicant on those.
Anyone else for Mrs. Perkins? Thank you. Mr. Wyatt?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the commission. I'm Evan Wyatt with Greenway Engineering, representing the Express Oil Change and Tire Engineers rezoning application. Before I get going on the actual staff report to build on that, the first thing I did want to do is take the opportunity to advise the commission that we do have a group here this evening that has traveled quite a ways from Alabama to be with us this evening. We have from Express Oil Change, John Davis, and then the contract purchasers, Charles Thompson and his better half, his wife, Kim Johnson, who will be the purchaser and developer of the property. Express Oil Change has been a interesting project for us. Just a little quick history. Express Oil Change, their business model is the 10-minute oil change. They also do some very light auto service like tires and alignments and tune-ups. This will be the first Express Oil Change in the valley along 81. This will be the fifth one in the state of Virginia, so we're very happy that they're looking at our community as a first stop on the 81 corridor. Now, with that said, really just to expand on Candace's staff report, one thing that you may have noticed in the proffer is that the proffer does require for interparcel connectivity. We have an agreement with IHOP, who is the tenant, and the property owner, Lennox, who owns the property that IHOP is situated on. The original way these properties were developed, this is our property, and of course, this is IHOP. There was one group that owned both properties. So when Lennox purchased this property from them, they set up an opportunity to run an ingress-egress easement through the IHOP property to allow the property to gain access to the signalized intersection. When this particular project came in, there was a discussion with VDOT about a shared right-in, right-out access on 522, which VDOT was receptive to. So what we ended up doing was we also started working with this property owner to see if we could also accomplish an access for the rear, and that document has been accepted as being an appropriate circulation pattern for both properties. The actual agreement is finalized. It's being shipped around for actual signatures by all property owners and the tenant. The reason it wasn't done in advance of this meeting, there was a little tweak in the agreement that IHOP had a right of refusal if it was a competing use. So, for example, if a Waffle House was the user, IHOP was not obligated to sign the agreement. But since that's a non-issue, they're doing that now. So We have a group in Virginia, Alabama, and California where this is being thrown around to get finalized. But staff was kind enough to allow us to come before you this evening. Obviously, the proffer requires the interparcel access, but they know that this is getting finalized and taking a little bit of time. So they were kind enough to allow us to come here this evening with the understanding the recorded instrument would be in place before the board hearing next month. Other than that, I don't really have any thing to expand on. But once again, we do have some guests that have come quite a ways away to show you they are serious about this community. If you have specific questions of Express Oil, they're more than happy to give you as much information as you care to know. If not, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, Mr. Wyatt?
I just have one. Will most of the operations be done indoors? in
Yeah,
both-
the way,
both businesses?
yeah, all the operation is indoors, Mr. Ambrogi. They will have 5 bays. 3 of them will be for oil service, which represents about 75% of their volume. The other, there'll be 2 bays that allow for access for service-type use. Everything is indoors. Everything is contained indoors. There's no outdoor storage. There's no outdoor service on vehicles.
Thank you, that's what I thought.
Was there one down here?
Mr. White, just one quick question. That's right there where the Costco entrance is, and Costco has that barrier
Yes, sir.
there that prevents the people that's going southbound to go left, and they always make that, they abuse that privilege. But in front of this one, the right in, right out, did I read somewhere in here that there was going to be a similar barrier in front of this one, so people that's going northbound will not be able to make that?
Yeah, there's 2 things, Kevin. The first one is the distance between the signalized intersection and where the right in, right out will be does not meet VDOT normal spacing requirements, so we have to process an access management exception request. We've met with VDOT, and they're receptive to the entire concept. They have recognized that if we cannot design a sufficient pork chop kind of barrier that would prevent left turn, they would be looking for extension of the median to ensure that left turn movement could not occur.
What would be something like, I mean, maybe too early in the process to ask, what would it be like the barriers they have out there now currently?
It very well could be. They could decide to go with some sort of raised concrete or some sort of barrier median.
Okay.
But when we get to the site plan, in order to get site plan approval comments from VDOT, we have to obtain their access management exception approval as a first step, and then the design that would comply with that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Thomas.
Evan, I think, did I understand you to say there'd be 3 oil change bays and 2 service bays?
Correct.
In your proffer, it says 3 service bays and 3 oil change bays. Is still going to be the same square footage, just dropped 1 bay? Or?
Well, actually, the building footprint had to shrink a little bit, unfortunately, so instead of 6 total, we're now at 5.
Okay, and the square footage will be down too?
Yes, sir. Mhm.
Anyone else for Mr. Wyatt? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
This is a public hearing. If anyone in the audience would like to speak to us concerning this application, we invite you to come to the microphone. Well, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Let's see. This is in Shawnee District, and Shawnee has got,
Madam Chairman, move for approval of zoning application number 2-47, 17, I'm sorry.
is there a second?
Second.
Are there any other comments? Okay. Mr. Unger?
Unger, yes.
Marston, yes.
Ambrogi, yes.
Klein, yes.
Vote yes.
Thomas, yes.
Bolden, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Triplett, yes.
And the chair votes yes. This will go to the Board of Supervisors. Let me get my list. Do you have one there? Yes, on March the 8th. It will be at the Board of Supervisors, so. And we thank you from Alabama, and I hope you enjoyed your trip. Okay, our next item is an action item for the commission. It's rezoning 01-17 DMJ Holding LLC, submitted by Painter Lewis PLC to revise proffers associated with rezoning 05-9. This minor proffer amendment proposes to remove a proffer which currently prohibits fast food restaurants with drive-through service windows. If approved, the site would permit the construction of fast food restaurants with drive-through service windows if all the other requirements are met. All other proffers remain the same. The properties are located at the northwest corner of the intersection of Route 50 and Route 781 Custer Avenue in the Shawnee Magisterial District and are identified by property identification number 64A-416A, 64A-4-6, 64A-4-17, 64A-4-18, 64A-4-19, and 64A-4-20. Mrs. Perkins.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the commission. As you stated, this is a minor proffer revision for the proffers associated with rezoning 5 of 2009 to change one of the proffers pertaining to the exclusion of fast food restaurants with drive-throughs. If I can direct you to the screen on your left, the subject properties are outlined in black. For reference purposes, we have Route 50 East, Millwood Pike, that runs along the frontage of those properties. And also, this is the proffer generalized development plan. It remains the same as the 2009 rezoning. And again, for reference, you have the subject properties in this location, Millwood Pike, and then Custer Avenue. I'm really just going to go over some of the potential impacts that were outlined in the staff report. I would note that under the current proffer that was approved back in 2009, the properties were limited to no more than 200 vehicle trips per hour during any day. This proffer remains unchanged from the 2009 approval. And I would note that if a fast food restaurant is constructed on this property with a drive-through, it would max out the hourly cap of the uses. So the remainder of the property has the potential to remain undeveloped without a future rezoning. We really just wanted to point that out as part of the impacts if this were to be approved. So this is a very minor proffer amendment. The commitments remain the same with the exception of the allowance for a drive-through with a fast food restaurant. Previously, you could still do a fast food restaurant, it just couldn't have a drive-through component. So with this application, a public hearing is not required, as it is a minor proffer amendment. Following the public meeting, staff is seeking a recommendation from the commission to forward to the board. I would be glad to answer any questions, and Mr. John Lewis with Painter & Lewis is here on behalf of the application.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions, Mrs. Perkins? Yes, Mr. Oates.
Candace, I don't agree that this is minor, because before this was a use proffered out because the neighbor said it was too intense, the fast food restaurant. And back in 2009, that was addressed by restricting it, and that's how they got the rezoning through. So to me, this being a minor proffer amendment just doesn't sit well. I think there should have been a public hearing, and neighbors should have had the chance to weigh in on this, rather than just a quick meeting between us and moving on. Does staff just solely look at whether or not it's increasing traffic is the only parameter of whether it's a more intense use and guiding that?
When looking at the allowance that is built into the zoning ordinance per the state code, this met those allowances to be considered a minor proffer amendment.
So
'Cause we're-
noises, smells, traffic, hours of operation, all that doesn't qualify as a more intense use?
Well, the previous rezoning didn't have any limitations on the hours of operation, and since it already allowed for a fast food restaurant, and the only addition is the allowance for a drive-through, and it didn't increase the maximum cap on the traffic, we felt it still fell under a minor proffer amendment.
Okay.
Anyone else? Mr. Unger down there.
Candace, how do you monitor 200 trips per hour?
It would be done through the site plan. When they submit the site plan to the county and VDOT, it's based on the trip generation manual. So the use that they're proposing, along with the building square footage, it would have to equate to no more than 200 vehicle trips.
Anyone
I
else?
still don't understand, but I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, that bothers me too. I mean, I don't know how we're going to police that, because, I mean, 200 vehicle trips, that's a couple cars a minute, but that includes everybody going in and out, not just the drive-through. So I don't know how we can enforce something like that.
Right, our only enforcement mechanism is prior to the actual final approval of it. And it's based on the square footage and what it would generate based on the manuals.
Yeah, but that doesn't give back to Mr. Oates' point, that doesn't give the neighbors an opportunity either by running this through the minor site plan or minor revision, doesn't give the neighbors an opportunity to come in and express their concerns, because, 200 trips might end up being 400 trips, and the neighbors have had no ability to comment on it.
And that potential still would have been there under the previous rezoning, because you could have done multiple buildings and still would have equated to that X number of trips per day based on the ITE manual. So,
Well, I would agree with that, but the neighbors didn't have much concern with those other uses, whereas they specifically had an issue with fast food drive-through restaurants before.
Understood.
If we're adding that drive-through component, are we going to have some type of protection for the neighbors so that the headlights, because on a drive-through, you have a lot of headlight,
Right, we would have
reflection and-
landscaping that, under the site plan, it's similar to parking. You would have at least a 36-inch evergreen hedge for screening, for any movements that would generate impacts of lighting.
Anyone else down there?
So Candace, pretty much this is just going, we're consolidating all the lots. It's going to be just for a fast food restaurant. So there'll be no other
Right, if they choose to cap out with one user,
creating
it
this
would be
just
one
for the
user.
drive-through component, really.
Correct.
I have to voice my concerns along with Mr. Oates and Mr. Thomas and everyone else. How are we going to police this? I don't know. It seems like we're veering off of where this should be going with this one, but it also seems that we're kind of bound by what you're saying is state code allows it. I just have some angst here with this one. Where that location is and the high traffic and the speeds, that's what, that deceleration, people coming into Winchester, that traffic count, what have you, going out onto that 50 there. I'm familiar with that parcel that has sat there for a long time, but it just seems like that's a tough one to induce that much more high traffic right into that area there. So I just do have some, I agree with these other gentlemen. I think that maybe a public hearing might be a better way to address this, but.
The traffic's not concerning me so much as it is, if I had a Burger King or a McDonald's coming in next to my house, first thing I'd do is put up a for sale sign. And we're doing this without giving the neighbors an opportunity to chime in. And they're going to be impacted big time if this goes forward.
So, this is an action item. Mr. Ruddy, do we have an alternative for taking this up tonight?
I think it's the Planning Commission's prerogative as to how you want to deal with it. We could deal with it this evening. There's the ability to postpone it, to consider it to a greater extent, and also to direct it through that public hearing process. We probably think that the Planning Commission may have the prerogative to do that. We thought long and hard about this particular request when it came on in, and considering the state code, considering the fact that the uses were generally the same uses, and it was an architectural question as opposed to an intensity with regards to the trips. We felt that this approach was definitely in keeping with the new state code legislation of a couple of years ago. But we did think hard about it. And I think then it falls back to the Planning Commission, whatever you may be comfortable with. Again, we feel as though it was appropriate to run this through the minor proffer amendment process as opposed to a public hearing process.
Yeah. Thank you. This is not a public hearing, but Mr. Lewis is here. Do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Yes, thank you. John Lewis with Painter Lewis representing the project. First of all, since 2009, that rezoning where the use of fast food was proffered out, the only interest in this parcel has been fast food. When we originally rezoned it, there was some concern by the neighbors about fast food. The owner decided to be a good neighbor and take that out, but there was another reason to do that. He'd like to be able to develop the entire 2.8 acres, and if you have a fast food use, that's going to be it because of the trip limitations. So regarding the trip limitations, you might remember in the 2009 rezoning, we had a 200 peak hour trip limit also. And there was no discussion about how we police that at that point. I think it's the prerogative of the county to ask for traffic studies at any time if they think the total trip is being, the total peak hour is being exceeded. Now, I will tell you that any fast food restaurant who gets 200 trips per hour is probably going to be pretty happy. That does not happen very often. I think the ITE manual for 4,000 square feet, as Candace says, does put it at around 200. But the ITE manual is pretty conservative. We would be certain that whatever use is on this parcel, whether it be fast food or whether it would be hotel office, does not exceed the 200 trips. That's in the proffers. So we're not here tonight saying that there's going to be fast food. It still could be office, it still could be an office and a hotel, still could be a hotel and a gas station, as long as we don't exceed the 200 trips per hour. That was the limiting factor in the proffer in 2009. The reason we're here before you tonight is because there hasn't been any interest in the parcel except for fast food. And that is not a sure thing at all. So we felt it would be appropriate to come back and ask for the fast food to be taken out of the proffers, the restriction of fast food to be taken out of the proffers, so that if a fast food restaurant comes along, that the owner would have a chance to develop the property. Now remember, it's 2.85 acres. If we get a 4,000 square foot fast food restaurant on there, you're going to develop about an acre. So you're going to have 1.8 acres that doesn't even get developed because of the 200 trips per hour cap. The neighbors, I knew this would come up. In fact, I thought it would be a public hearing myself. We made an effort in 2009 to meet with the homeowners association. You might remember, some of you who were around back then. And we did. And that's where the concerns were voiced, and we brought the concerns back, and that's how we crafted the proffers. We tried for a month to get a hold of the HOA. We could not do it. So it's either inactive or nobody volunteered to be the chairman. You know how those things go. So what we did is we wrote a letter, and in the letter we contained a package of our proposal, and we sent it to all the adjacent neighbors. I think there were 7 of them. We heard from 1. And I'd be happy to supply you with that information. I didn't bring it with me tonight. One of the neighbors had a concern. He just wanted some more information, and we addressed that. So the neighbors actually have been identified or have been notified for your information. And there was not much interest. The other point I'd like to make is the current zoning ordinance has a bunch of design standards, as you might know. You have design standards for building setbacks, you have buffering distance standards, you have landscaping standards, you have screening standards, you have noise standards, you have light standards. All of these things still apply, and they're in the zoning ordinance so that RP can exist next to B2. So those things all still apply. So, I feel that it's really not inappropriate to put the fast food use back in to, or take it out of the proffers. And we'd like to have that use. I'd like to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions of Mr. Lewis? Yes, Mr. Unger?
John, after thinking about that, in my opinion, I don't think there's a McDonald's around the area or any other place that could do 3 customers a minute. I mean, if that's what you're saying, if it's 200, I don't see how you're going to do that many customers going through there anyway, to be honest with you.
There's no fast food that does that, not in this town.
I don't think so either.
Now, according to the ITE manual, you will, but the ITE manual doesn't make burgers, so.
Right, I would incline to agree with you. You're not going to get that many people through there. If 200's allowed and it is safe, I'm certain you're not going to exceed that after thinking about it. That couldn't happen.
Yeah, and again, we're not really, the 200 trips is the maximum intensity we're allowed. You know, so whether
Right.
it's fast food or whether it's a hotel and a gas station, the intensity doesn't really change under this request. We're still limited by proffer to a peak hourly rate of 200 trips.
I think even if you put a McDonald's in there, you'd be very safe. If 200's allowed, you're not going to exceed that with customers.
Were you?
I don't have a question for.
No? Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
I do have a comment, though.
Yes.
What bothers me about this, this would appear to be a bait and switch if I was a homeowner there. Now, certainly I'll take Mr. Lewis at his word where he said he contacted the homeowners, nobody responded back. And I would hope in a couple months or after construction starts that we all of a sudden don't hear from all the homeowners that say,
Yeah.
we didn't know this was happening. But I find it a little concerning that back when we rezoned it because the homeowners didn't want to have a fast food restaurant there with a drive-in. And now, without giving anybody the opportunity to comment on it, we would turn around and say, oh, well, we were just kidding. We're now going to let that go in there. I mean, I understand the developer's standpoint. I understand Mr. Lewis's comments, and again, certainly would take him at his word that he contacted the people and no one had an adverse reaction. One person asked for some more information, but it just, I would hate to have us appear to be a bait and switch in this.
I'd be a lot more comfortable if we brought this back through and directed it to be a public hearing. I'm prepared to vote tonight, but that might change if I heard from the neighbors. If they were fine with it, then I'd probably change my vote. But without hearing from them, I don't think I really would like to vote on this tonight.
Excuse me, Mike, can we use this as an example of a continuing item or not? It has to be a different classification for a public hearing.
Again, I think the Planning Commission has the prerogative to continue the application and then also enable a public hearing to be part of the next, part of the continuation. So when it comes back in front of the Planning Commission, a public hearing has been duly advertised. Again, that may be an extra step given the recent code requirements, but the Planning Commission certainly has the ability to do that.
Okay. How do you all feel about that?
That would make me much more comfortable.
I agree. Yes.
Do we need a motion for that?
I think we do. Somebody want to make one?
I'd certainly move that we continue this, and when it comes back before us, come back as a public hearing. And all the neighbors, of course, would then be notified.
Second.
Okay. Any other comments? Mr. Triplett?
Mr. Triplett, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Bolden, yes.
Thomas, yes?
Vote yes.
Klein, yes.
Manuel, yes.
Ambrosi, yes.
Arston, yes.
And the chair votes yes. This also comes to the board, that'll come back to us as a public hearing. Thank you all. All right, our next item is an information item. It's Master Development Plan 01-17 for Freedom Manor, submitted by Pannoni Associates on behalf of Freedom Manor LLC. This application seeks to develop 47.54 acres of land zone RP residential performance with 90 units single-family detached and 100 units single-family attached. The subject properties are located east and adjacent to Paper Mill Road, Route 644, and approximately 2,300 feet northwest of the existing signalized intersection of Front Royal Pike, Route 522, and Paper Mill Road, Route 644 in the Shawnee Magisterial District. They are identified by property identification numbers 64A-19, 64A-20, and 64-A23. And this item is for informational purposes only. Mr. Klein.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission.
Madam Chair, I'll have to recuse.
Thank you.
You are correct. This is a proposal to develop 47 acres of land zoned RP or residential performance with 90 single-family detached clustered units and 100 townhome units at a total density of 5.47 units per acre. This is an overview of the site, and as you noted, it is west of Front Royal Pike. You have Paper Mill Road, and then you have your subject properties. To the immediate north of the site, you have Madison Village. The properties were rezoned back in 2015 with the approval of rezoning 1115 Freedom Manor. This application was approved for the rezoning of 33 acres from the RP or Residential Performance District and 13.8 acres from the RA Rural Areas District to the RP Residential Performance District with associated proffers. The application enabled the construction of up to 300 residential units. Access to this development will be provided from a roundabout intersection with Paper Mill Road and access through an interparcel connection to the northwest through the Madison Village development. The transportation network within the proposal also includes a 10-foot pedestrian trail along Paper Mill Road, internal public roads with sidewalks, and a trail that runs the length of the common boundary with Shenandoah Memorial Park. Here's a better overview of the site. On the southern portion of the property, you have Shenandoah Memorial Cemetery. You have your proffered trail in this open space here. You have your roundabout. You have your internal street for Davis Drive, which connects into Madison Village. On this portion of the property and here, you have your single-family detached clustered type housing. And here you have your single-family attached townhomes. The master development plan for Freedom Manor appears to be consistent with the requirements of the zoning ordinance, and this master development plan is in a form that is administratively approvable. This master development plan is also in conformance with the associated proffers for the approved rezoning 11-15. This master development plan is presented to the Planning Commission as an information item only, and no action is required at this time. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Klein?
All right.
I don't see them.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next item is also an information item. It's Master Development Plan 03-17 for Southern Hills Phase 2, submitted by Greenway Engineering on behalf of Arcadia Communities, LLC. This application seeks to develop 40.36 acres of land zone RP residential performance and B2 general business with up to 130 units, single-family detached cluster and right-of-way reserve area. The subject property is located south of Stevens City, east of Town Run Lane, Route 1012 in the Opequon Magisterial District. It's identified by property identification number 85D-1-1-95. Mr. Klein.
Okay, this is the second master development plan for the evening. Please ignore the heading. The number appears to be incorrect. It is 03-17. The proposal is to develop 37.79 acres of land zoned RP or residential performance with 130 single-family detached units. This master development plan also includes a 2.56 acre portion of land zoned B2 or general business district as right-of-way reservation for a future collector road, which is known as Southern Warrior Drive Extension. The site is located east of Town Run Lane, east of Interstate 81, and about a half mile south of the intersection of Fairfax Pike, Route 277, and Town Run Lane. Here's an overview of your site. You have Town Run Lane. You have Phase 1 of Southern Hills here to the south. Interstate 81 is here to the west, and Fairfax Pike is to the north. You can see that the subject property is split zone between RP and B2. The property was rezoned at the end of 2016 with the approval of rezoning 1116 Southern Hills Phase 2. This application revised the proffers for rezoning 16-06 to allow for the construction of up to 130 single-family detached units. This proffer amendment changed the housing type mix from townhomes or multifamily units to single-family detached units and decrease the unit total by 102 units. The Southern Frederick Area Plan of the Comprehensive Plan identifies this property with residential and commercial land use designations. The current RP residential performance and B2 general business districts are in conformance with the Comprehensive Plan. Access to the site will be provided from an access drive from Town Run Lane, and it will connect through an interparcel connection with Southern Hills Phase 1 via Westchester Drive. Sidewalks will be included on either side of internal streets for pedestrian connectivity and within the development, and a 10-foot trail along town. There will also be a 10-foot wide asphalt trail along Town Run Lane, and the applicant intends to preserve the Ewing Family Cemetery in the southeast corner of the property. The right-of-way for the new arterial, future Southern Warrior Drive extension is reserved as shown on the MDP in the B2 portion. Here is an overview of the site. Sorry. You have the preservation of the Ewing Family Cemetery here. You have your access point from Town Run Lane, and you have your interparcel connection with Southern Hills Phase 1. You also have your right-of-way reservation here for future Southern Warrior Drive extended. This master development plan for Southern Hills Phase 2 appears to be consistent with the requirements of the zoning ordinance, and this master development plan is in a form that is administratively approvable. The master development plan is also in conformance with the approved proffer statement and for rezoning 11-16. This master development plan is presented to you this evening as an information item only, and no action is required by the Planning Commission. Mr. Evan Wyatt with Greenway Engineering, representing the applicant, is here this evening to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Klein? Don't see any. Any questions of Mr. Wyatt?
Just real quick, because I think I saw some confusion on a couple of the commissioners. Tyler spoke just a little bit incorrectly. The right-of-way has been dedicated. It's not a reservation of right-of-way. Those dedication plats were put to record when we went through the rezoning process. Just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't need to take any action. We don't need to comment. So let's move on. Let's see, our last item. I think this is our last item. Mr. Ruddy. Will be talking to us briefly about the annual
Chairman, members of the
report.
Planning Commission, I will indeed be brief, and if this is usually the time of year when we do have a Planning Commission retreat, and that's when we often present the county's annual report and then talk about different things we'll be getting into throughout the year. We won't be having that, of course, this month, and We look to have a similar type of retreat work session as to what we did last year in the April-May timeframe, probably in April, where we can get into some of those issues or projects that we need to. Obviously, there are a few that are out there talking about proffers again, most likely the capital improvement plan and improvements to that process, and also a recap perhaps of how the comprehensive plan update went. So we look forward to having some sort of work session probably within a month or two. But of course, we wanted to make sure that the annual report was something that the Planning Commission received. And that's something that we'll be sending out to you probably first thing in the morning. I just wanted to hit on a couple of highlights, if you will, that we usually do beyond the usual rezonings, conditional use permit, those type of applications. But you'll be getting the annual report tomorrow. Transportation has been a big part of it. This picture represents, of course, Snowden Bridge Boulevard, which will be open before you know it. Activities, the first thing that we always look at, and the week before last, the Weldon Cooper Center for Public Service came out with the population estimate for Frederick County for 2016. And so this just reflects and share with you that the population is estimated at 83,998. So that's again an increase of probably 1,400 over the previous estimate. And as was background for our comprehensive plan update, we recognize that as we get into the out years of 2020, 30, and 40, then the population is estimated to increase considerably, and that's why, of course, the comprehensive plan has been so important to us. Beyond the population estimates, let's look at a little reality right now and recognize the number of building permits that were issued last year in Frederick County, and see how that plays with the trend that we've had in recent years, where from a high, if you will, of 1,200 back in 2005, we bottomed out at 275, 279, 286 in that number. More recently, we've obviously seen an increase back up to 709 last year, and then in 2015, and then this past year, 2016, we had 714 residential building permits. So the activity is certainly there. When we take that one step further and look at where those residential building permits came from, clearly we have the Stonewall District and the Apecan District, which are leading those building permits as they come on in. The Apecan District, 293 this past year. And that, of course, reflects the Lake Frederick ongoing development in that area. And then up in the Stonewall District, of course, the continuing development of Snowden Bridge. One last thing to see, a little bit of the breakdown of that, of 714 permits. 473 of those were single-family, 180 townhouses, some mobile homes, and then some multi-family projects. So it gives us a little bit of an idea of, again, the projections, reinforcing the projections and seeing where the activity is from the residential side of things. Obviously, we've had a number of site plans approved, rezonings, conditional use permits, and all of those good things that we usually do, and that's reflected in the annual report that you'll see hopefully tomorrow. But again, I just wanted to hit on those couple of items that we certainly track on an annual basis, and it's good to see that there's that amount of activity continuing in the county.
Thank you.
So look out for your email, and you'll be getting this sent to you via space.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mike. Yes. Mr. Oates.
In the past, we've had a CIP approved and ready to go by this time of the year. And I've always learned that since I've been on here, we need a CIP in place to accept proffers on rezonings. We haven't even started the CIP process yet. Is there any chance we're going to be getting rezonings in front of us where basically applicants won't have to proffer anything because there's no CIP to tie this to?
We have a CIP in place. It's just a dated CIP. So we're
over to the next year if we don't get a new one in place?
That'll be the position that the county has, would continue with at this point, recognizing that the CIP is an important planning document for the county that then can be also used as part of the budget process.
But that CIP is tied to a dead comp plan now because we've got a new comp plan in place.
they all continue to work together and continue to be updated and improved. As an example, the CIP for this year was started back in August, and all of the different departments, county agencies provided their information. And so we have a CIP that's in the form that it always has been, and we look forward to hopefully bringing that through. The Comp Plan Committee will likely see it at their March meeting. But again, we know that the Board of Supervisors are looking to improve upon the CIP process. Their work program that they got into at the end of last year and hopefully will be approving at one of their upcoming board meetings gives clear direction to the CIP being a priority. And it says that as they get through this year's CIP process, this year's budget process, before we get into next year's, we will do a thorough evaluation of the CIP, how we use it here in Frederick County, and see what other changes need to be made. We'll also be looking at other localities' CIPs. So as part of the board's work program, the CIP is definitely on the agenda, and the Planning Commission will have a big role to play in that, I believe. But you're right, we don't have one that has gone through the public hearing process for this current year, as we often would do by this time of the year. But we do have a CIP that was approved a year or so ago, if not 2 years ago now, that gives us some foundation as we continue to move forward. But there's always room for improvement. This current year's is in the works, but we're waiting for better direction as we move it forward.
We're basically 4 months out waiting on the board. If they don't move forward with that action, will we still see it in March, or is it going to continue to be delayed?
I think the Comp Plan Committee will see the information that was submitted by the department, the county agencies and entities, and we'll see the CIP. Where it goes from that point, I'm still waiting for direction.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Other questions of Mr. Ruddy?
I just didn't had a blank.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are at the end of our agenda. Is there anything else for the good of the cause? I want to share with us that we do have a March 1st meeting, so you can put that on your calendar.
Did you get in touch with Gene?
Madam Chairman, this is adjourned.
Oh, take your time. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
They're probably trying to.